Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. I was keen to join you just to say how much I support what this network is all about, and how important its work is and its voice is right now. I think we're living through a crisis of democracy in this country. I don't think you can separate the kind of issues the country has at a national level from the weaknesses in the democratic system. There's a prime example right in front of us right now, the post office scandal. I think one of our problems is we have a large, unaccountable, unelected state that often doesn't listen and leaves people in the wilderness for many years, as we've seen with the sub postmasters and mistresses. But for the post office scandal, I mean, you could just you could line up another 10, 20, 15, 20 unresolved injustices behind it. You know, I could reel them off for you: contaminated blood, nuclear test veterans, Primados. I could go on. And this is because this is sadly a feature of our democracy. We don't have enough accountability in the system. So, Jesse, what I wanted to say is that, I will talk about what you asked me to there in terms of power to the regions, but I don't think you can look at that in isolation from rewiring the state at a national level. I'm sure you'll have talked about that today, but I think we do need to think about English devolution in the context of a reformed parliament. One experience that I remember very much going into the House of Commons as a new MP is almost how you kind of go in there with all of these hopes and expectations of the public and the goodwill, and almost that agency is taken off you the minute you go under the whip system in Parliament. And I think that is a problem, a big part of the problem, because it hands power to the unelected state and takes it off Parliament. And Steve Rotherham and I shouldn't be plugging a book, Jesse, should I, on this very important conference? But we are writing a book about these very themes, and we're calling for the reform of the Commons alongside a form of proportional representation for the voting system, and a Senate of the nations and regions alongside Gordon Brown's call on this point. Until Parliament represents all people and all places equally, what chance have we really got? And actually, when Parliament is really empowered to do its job, so that we don't have injustices just rumbling on for decades, public bodies, government departments should be accountable to Parliament. It is unbelievable still to me that as Secretary of State for Health, I was told lies about the contaminated blood scandal. I was told that nobody was knowingly given an unsafe blood product. Well, that kind of thing happens in a country where people don't feel sufficiently accountable. And that balance isn't right in the system at the moment. And I did just want to say that. Before then, you talk about devolving power out of a reformed Parliament. So you do have to reform Parliament, but then you have to devolve power out of it. I think if we're going to be more positive for a moment, this is one area where the country's made real progress in recent times. Obviously, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and London had a model of devolution 20 years ago. There's been a big gap in terms of the English regions, but finally it's being filled. And I would argue it's being filled with a more functional model than what we see elsewhere, because at the risk of, I don't want to ignite too much of a debate with Scottish colleagues, but I do think it's problematic that in the Scottish context, a lot of power has been hoovered up to Holyrood and has been sort of in many ways taken out of the localities and the regions, the towns and cities of Scotland, with the creation of Police Scotland and Fire Scotland. I don't think that type of arrangement creates the conditions for healthy democracy. I think the closer you have decision making to people, the better. And I would definitely point to the model of devolution in England that is really starting to work, and is a sort of, in many ways, quite a kind of isolated example of good cross-party consensus progress in the last decade, a decade that hasn't seen much of that on a wider scale. We are using it well. We are We are continuing to grow faster than the UK economy here. We've put buses back under public control, very much with the support of our residents. We're building the country's first integrated technical education system. We're using what we've got really well. We've signed a devolution deal with the government to move towards a single settlement for Greater Manchester, which is more akin to what Wales and Scotland have. So we have more flexibility to move money around. So all of this represents, I think, Jesse, really good progress. And the combined authority model in England is definitely working. And I'm not just boasting about Greater Manchester's achievements. You know, Steve has taken the decision to put buses under public control in Liverpool. It's something, isn't it? The fact that two English mayors in a period of Conservative government have been able to overturn a key, unfortunate legacy of the Thatcher era, in our view, you know, the kind of the deregulation of buses. I think it's really important that we've been for any skeptics about, is English devolution worth bothering with? Does it really have power? Well, that should tell you that we do actually have power to do something, and that is already making a difference. We're, you know, using it to lower bus fares for people, and that is really helping them. So I would say that, you know, it is working. It's still in its early days. We do need more power. I definitely would say some simple moves on a sort of fiscal level would be sensible now. For instance, you know, can we look at land value capture so that we can capture some of the uplift in land values where we're putting new infrastructure in? Can we look at a tourist tax, for instance? Why not? We pay it when we go to other European cities. That kind of move, not going too far too fast, but starting to sort of build up the sort of the wherewithal of combined authorities. There's a big risk to English devolution, though, Jesse, in its current phase, that if we don't address it, could actually collapse it, and that is the local government finance space, which is, as we all know, in a dire state. And I despair, actually, looking at the world through the eyes I have now compared to where I used to be in Westminster, how disrespectful national government is of local government. It is quite breathtaking at times when they go through these debates that they have and around budgets about being tough on benefits and freezing this and, you know, freezing the local housing allowance. It's only when you leave Westminster and you kind of do what I do that you realize when they do things like that, it just piles unfunded costs on local authorities that they've already starved of funding anyway. I mean, it's actually quite arrogant, I think, for national government to behave in that way, to just keep piling pressures and costs on local government without recognizing those pressures and funding them and helping them meet those pressures. Councils are the last line of defense. You know, if there's something wrong, the public will moan to the council about the roads or homelessness or whatever it might be. They've still got to try and find a way. And it's just frankly wrong that they're always the sort of easy target when it comes to departmental spending cuts. You know, just cut local government again. Well, we can't keep doing it, because if we do keep doing it, in the end, that will create cracks in the combined authority model. In fact, you could say it already is. You know, we've seen some big councils issue those Section 114 notices. So I think that has to be addressed before much further, because otherwise this kind of success story, a rare democratic success story in the times we've been living of English devolution, could actually easily fall, because the foundations beneath it are really opening up. And then I don't know, Jesse, if you want to take questions, I'm more than happy to. I was just going to finish off on one point, which in some ways picks up everything I've said and kind of almost brings it all together. I think we need to be talking about a written constitution for the country, to codify all of this, to codify the relationship between a reformed parliament and the executive, to have those measures in place that bring the accountability up to a level where it should be. For instance, a duty of candor on all public servants to tell the truth at the first time of asking, to stop this kind of repeated pattern that we see of the unelected, unaccountable state kind of freezing people out and creating these injustices that just go on for ages. I think that also, though, needs to relate to the way national government treats local government, the decision-making processes. Look at COVID and the COVID inquiry. What I think that has done and is doing is really showing people how dysfunctional the running of our country is. Because of the whip system and the way we run things, I would say no more than 50 people run this country at any given time, because in effect, Parliament hands a lot of power to the centre, and it's a mixture, mainly unelected, but a group of cabinet ministers will run the country at any given time. I would argue that is dysfunctional in normal times. It's downright dangerous in a pandemic. And that is what we saw. We saw decisions being foisted out onto the country without consideration of the local impacts, without consultation. It was awful. On what basis was Greater Manchester not represented on COBRA, never invited once to attend a COBRA meeting? On what basis was that justified? It can't be justified. So you kind of need a new set of rules, really, for how the country works and who kind of sits where and whose voice is heard and how decisions get made. The prime example, probably you could argue the worst example, was when the entire government came to the city from where I'm talking to you from now for their party conference, allowed a rumour mill to get out of control around the scrapping of a rail project that we were promised 10 years ago when George Osborne first delivered his Northern Powerhouse speech. Ignored, even though they were in a hotel yards from us, ignored repeated requests from myself and the leader of Manchester City Council for a meeting, for at least a discussion about something that had massive implications for us, cost implications for us as well. And to do none of that, and then to stand up in our city and then just cancel it, tear it up in our face. Should any government be allowed to do that? Should you be able just to unilaterally, without consultation, rip up something of that magnitude, given that a rail project like that goes beyond the life of any government, any parliament? I honestly don't think you should be able to do that. And that's what a written constitution would codify, these relationships, so that democracy functions properly, it's wired properly, and decisions are made with due consideration of perspectives. So those are the thoughts from Manchester, Jesse, on this cold Wednesday morning. I hope they've warmed up the room a little bit. Thank you so
much. We'll just have a round of applause for.
No worries.
Your wonderful grace has let us know that we do have a very limited time with you for follow-up questions, Andy. And I know she'll be on to me if I keep you for too long. But I guess what I wanted to say is that you've got a lot of people in the room who probably agree with a lot of your sentiment, and you're a Labour representative, but you're also a significant mayor in the country. And really, we want to be able to work collectively to shape whatever government is in charge, that change and democratic change is not only like on the table, but it's a fundamental project of any incoming government. And I guess my question is, how can we work with you? As I said, a lot of people will reflect and probably support everything that you said, but at the moment we're kind of disparate voices. So have you got any thoughts on how we continue this conversation to influence both, I guess, a future Labour government and also to work with the Conservatives and the current government on these issues?
I think it's a good question, Jesse. I think you are doing it. It is happening. I notice a change in the Labour Party, PR, for instance, in terms of how that's been discussed at the conference we had last year and the one before it. It's changing. I think people can see issues of the democratic wiring of the country being first order issues, not sort of afterthought issues. There's a received wisdom in Westminster. I hear it all the time. I heard it when I was there. Oh, these aren't priorities for the voters. We have to get on with things that matter more than the House of Lords and all of these things. The bottom line is, if the wiring of the country isn't right, you're not going to get better transport in the English regions. You're not going to get homes being built. You're not going to improve growth and productivity, because the way the country's wired at the moment, it's dragging to London and the Southeast, with all respect to people from those parts. But it is, we aren't set up to do more for ourselves and improve things in the way that we need to. And therefore they are first order issues. And actually, if you speak to the public right now, I think they consider them such as well. You know, the outrage of seeing people who are, you know, apparatchiks in the party system, 30-year-old apparatchiks, donors, you know, the architect of Vote Leave, who had question mark as to whether or not, you know, they even obeyed the law when the referendum was on. I think allegations, I'm not saying, but there was at least that question. But then all in the House of Lords. I mean, that the public see that and they go, hang on a minute, who is benefiting here? Who is getting access to the PPE lane? You know, I just think the public see all of that as first order now. They don't see it as a sort of a fringe issue. And I think it's the work of people in the room, isn't it? That's built that understanding. And I think, you know, as we go into election year proper, I think we need to kind of serve up. You can't fix all of this stuff in a parliament, of course not. You know that, and I would understand people in, you know, our party to say, well, you know, we're going to have to get on with other things. But what can you do in a parliament? I think you can fix the House of Lords. I don't know whether people are still attracted to the Billy Bragg solution for the Lords, the secondary mandate, where you kind of build a Lords from votes for the Commons at a general election. And you do that via, you know, regional list system. You could create Gordon's Senate of the Nations and Regions from that, you know, that secondary mandate. You could do that for the 2029 general election. Personally, I would say, in the end, you would want a directly elected Lords on a proportional basis and a directly elected Commons, and you would work towards that. But you can certainly take interim steps towards it. But the English devolution model is working. And I would say to the incoming government, I hope it's a Labour government, work with it really quickly and strengthen it, because it's a delivery system for you. I don't think an incoming government gets a honeymoon, perhaps like 1997. I don't think there's patience out there. I think people want change and they want it pretty quickly. So there's a delivery system in place that just didn't exist in 1997. And I would say, and I will be saying to the party, and I'm, you know, talking to them very closely at the moment, use us really, you know, directly now. Task us with growth plans, housing plans. You know, you could deliver in a 5-year parliament using the combined authority structures of the England as we've now got them, but it requires, you know, strengthening of powers and funding as well. So, you know, I think I'm optimistic, Jesse, I guess is what I'm saying. You know, I think the public debate is with us, with you, with everybody in the room. I think you've won those arguments. The public sees the country needs a democratic reset, definitely. Everyone sees that. The question is turning it into practical steps rather than doing it all at once. You know, what's a roadmap towards a rewired Britain? And the book that will be in all good bookshops from February might give you some ideas for that.
Lost my microphone. There we'll happily do an event for you on the book launch as well, Andy, if you would like, because I'm sure a lot of people will. We'll
do a double act, mate.
You and Steve. Yeah, we've had we'll definitely get you both to do something on that, and we'll continue talking. Thank you so much, Andy.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening. Good to see you, Jesse. See you soon.